I'm a fan.
Okay, so I'm a fan. Well, let's see if I'm a fan.
Two of some of the biggest names in the American scene of political commentary, supposedly on opposite ends of the political spectrum. The liberal and atheist Bill Maher, a comedian with a popular HBO talk show, and the right-wing conservative Ben Shapiro, the creator of his own conservative media company, The Daily Wire. Let's try to answer these questions. Does this collaborative dynamic between Bill Maher and Ben Shapiro extend beyond these two? Is centrism reactionary by nature? And is it inevitable that centrists open the door to the right?
No, not in any sense of the word. But essentially, yes, entirely.
In political discourse, we often hear about the extremes of the binary left-right spectrum. But is the centre where you can get the best of both? No idealism, no emotion, just lovely rational discussion and sensibility. Centrists present themselves as the common sense middle ground and claim to do away with labels of left and right. They often say that the left and right are two equally bad extremes. The thing is, this has never been the case. Not in practice, not in principle. Across Europe and North America, a major political trend has been occurring. The centrist, or liberal, has, when presented with the opportunity, sided with the right, or adopted policies and rhetoric associated with the right, often under the guise of electability. Centrists and liberals can talk endlessly about all the reasons why things can't change. The inevitability of exploitation and inequality because, hey, it's human nature. Let's do a little head-to-head.
I'm a house
P-word. So first of all, she had to clarify whether wet-ass P-word was a description of the P-word or whether one of the clinical symptoms here was also diarrhea.
Round 1.
At first glance, you might think there would be a world of difference. Ben is a right libertarian, believing firmly in the wonders of an unregulated free market, or laissez-faire capitalism, free from any kind of state intervention or social programs. He believes capitalism to be the most moral system upholding individual rights and believes in the personal responsibility of the individual above all else. Ben Shapiro's ideal world, I guess, could be best described as social Darwinist, the kind of dog-eat-dog you'd get from a Dickensian dystopia. For him, inequality is not immoral, it's a necessary consequence. Therefore, the legal obligation, through tax and state intervention, to pitch in to help those less fortunate is, in Ben's view, extremely immoral, a violation of individualism and personal success. Bill, on the other hand, predictably tends to eschew political labels. Aside from identifying as a liberal, you'll hear a lot about how terrible both sides are and how he is practical, even though he has at times contradicted himself and claimed to be a supporter of policies which are socialist. Although not as vocal, like Ben, he is skeptical of government intervention and spending, and shouldn't be considered anything more than economically conservative.
And look, no one is arguing that millennials haven't gotten a rotten deal in this economy, but they've also gotten too used to getting shit for free.
Through listening to either of them speak for like a minute, you'll realize they're both American exceptionalists. That is, the chauvinistic concept that America is objectively the best goddamn country on earth.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him...
Well, maybe besides one other country. The plucky protagonist of the story. America should be able to exert its interests and superiority on the world, especially by force. But first, how do their ideas translate into stances on domestic issues such as universal healthcare or student debt? Or racial inequality, for example. Bill Maher's understanding of the economy, of socialism, and of capitalism is fundamentally flawed. Like many centrists, his views presuppose that working and middle-class American taxpayers must shoulder the burden of economic responsibility in order to benefit from the most limited of government intervention. This perspective ignores the benefits of strategic state involvement and planning in the economy, in order to reduce inequality and provide essential social services. Maher's critique of socialism hinges on the assumption that government spending is inherently irresponsible, overlooking the successful implementation of socialist policies, and instead choosing to smear their success in some other countries and misrepresent in others. The United States operates on a basis that medical care is a commodity, not a human right. The American healthcare system is a corporate one, where providers and pharmaceutical companies are vying for profits. We've all heard horror stories about it from Americans. Access and affordability are nightmares, especially when you consider the context that we're talking about the most powerful and wealthy nation on earth. Bill Maher allegedly used to support a single-payer healthcare system, according to many of his viewers. but now is clearly opposed. He cites Canada as an example of universal healthcare not working. Bear in mind it's only not working because its healthcare system, much like the UK's, has been taken apart through privatization, which he fails to mention.
Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country.
Someone should also tell Bill he's looking at the wrong neighbour. He should instead talk about Cuba, a severely sanctioned, developing island nation that has, through its government, created world-class medical services. It seems that since it's become a more popular issue and has gained momentum in recent years, Maher was already doing what he could to sabotage it. For example, when we all thought Bernie wasn't a sellout, Bill Maher was doing what he could to frame Bernie's soft democratic socialist platform as not being viable economically. But it's not viable because Bill, who has a net worth of over $180 million and earns over $20 million annually, doesn't quite like the idea of a wealth tax on the rich, despite claiming in the same breath that he's all about ending income inequality. Ben Shapiro, well, I'll let him do the talking on this one.
This is foolish, both morally and practically. Morally, you have no right to demand medical care of me. I may recognize your necessity, I may offer charity. My friends and I may choose to band together and fund your medical care, but your necessity does not change the basic math. Medical care is a service and a good provided by a third party. No matter how much I need bread, I do not have a right to steal your wallet or hold up the local bakery to obtain it.
I'm an adult virgin.
The important thing to note is that centrists like Bill do not have any moral objections to the economic policies of the right. They're just pragmatic. In other words, they can be nice and flexible with their values. And this is an important distinction between the two. They adopt certain policies that appeal to the left and working class in order to essentially disarm genuine political challenges and demands, all the while policing the boundaries of how left we can go in order to keep things as they are.
Round 2.
It'll probably come as no surprise to you that Ben has some pretty atrocious takes on racial issues and ethnic minorities, but so too does Bill. In an article laying out his rationale against introducing reparations for impoverished black Americans, Ben Shapiro announces he knows why there is such a big skyrocketing income gap between black and white Americans. Ben pulls out this absolute perler. It turns out that public policy designed to alleviate inequality can also alleviate the consequences of bad decision making. That's right, you're poor because of bad decision making, and because you make bad decisions, you and your family deserve poverty. Ignoring the enduring legacy of slavery, segregation, and its lasting impact on access to education, healthcare, employment, and state-sanctioned brutality through the police, Ben lays the blame at the door of individual decision-making. Or more accurately, Ben thinks black Americans bring it on themselves because they just don't make good and responsible decisions. Now, you think this is an area where Bill, a liberal, would flourish, but no. Bill's rationale for railing against reparations programs is by insisting that American people today aren't responsible for the slavery of yesterday. But that's a straw man argument. Reparations are about correcting the injustice and inequality of the material conditions of black Americans today that are direct results of the oppression of yesterday. Some of the weapons of oppression were removed, sure, but that's not justice. You've just stopped the perpetrator from committing a crime. And if you're the victim of a crime, you're entitled to compensation, right? But this is just it for me. Centrism isn't even really pragmatism. It's a con. It's saying whatever is needed to win the right people over. But this brings me to my next point. These two perfectly exemplify another aspect of their common ground. They may use slightly different rationales but arrive at more or less the same conclusion. Another one of the most glaring common ground for reactionary centrists and rightists is foreign policy and Muslims.
Round 3.
Ben Shapiro, aside from his promotion of social Darwinism, is a well-known peddler of Islamophobic hate, without question. But Bill is just as extreme. In fact, in my opinion, Bill was the bigger danger. The celebrity, the guy on the same TV channel as f***ing Game of Thrones. He is considered a respectable voice in liberal circles. I mean genuinely. It's as fucked as if HBO gave this smackhead a show where he discusses his Sharia no-go zones in London and Paris, because that is literally what Bill Maher does.
There's definitely no-go zones in European cities. No-go in the sense that, like, London, Paris have ghettos, Muslim ghettos that, neighborhoods, whatever, maybe they're lovely, but they're, you know, there is almost Islamic law in the neighborhood.
And no one bats an eyelid. Bill is anti-woke and anti-cancel culture not because he believes so strongly in freedom of expression. It's ultimately because there's been a surge in support for leftist politics, beyond the liberal centre, and this has exposed Maher as not being as progressive as many has thought him to be. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's try to answer this question. Does this collaborative dynamic between Bill Maher and Ben Shapiro extend beyond these two? While we tend to associate the right with more fiery and divisive rhetoric, the reactionary centrists actually fight for the same results. What unites these two groups, despite the latter being more open to social and economic policies which lean towards the left? See Emmanuel Macron and his ministers, who have at many points launched attacks against minorities and even accused right-winger Le Pen of being soft on Islam. See Keir Starmer, clearly aware of the surge in support for the right, went on a bizarre, unprovoked tirade against British Bangladeshis, complaining that not enough were being deported. Never mind that Bangladeshis don't represent any of the major nationalities emigrating to the UK. See the liberal and centrist Dutch parties who have formed a coalition government with far-right nationalist Geert Wilders, who has called for banning the Quran and implementing Israeli-style military policing in the Netherlands. There are innumerable examples of this kind of collaboration or collusion, none more so than when it comes to foreign policy. Bill Maher and Ben Shapiro are both warmongers. You'd be hard-pressed to find an American invasion or bombing campaign that didn't have their stamps of approval. Their Islamophobia and American chauvinism is no coincidence, by the way. Spreading this kind of sentiment is essential to securing the approval of the public in pursuit of military action. And when it comes to Israel, Israel, the contradictions fly in. These two flag-flying America-first patriots, who ironically so oppose anything remotely resembling socialism, are very much in favor of US taxpayers funding Israel's universal healthcare system. Someone should ask Ben, is Israel holding us at gunpoint? They're also very much in favor of sending billions upon billions to the settler colony, and you'll hear no talk of how will we afford it, no talk of missing magic money trees, and the staunchly anti-religious, God-hating liberal has absolutely no cognitive dissonance in his support for a chauvinistic ethno-state. Because for Israel and for war, well, what the fuck do you know? And it's actually their love of Zionism which underpins their shared Islamophobia. Imperialism is the great unifier and a pretty sound indicator of establishment-itis. And this is why you will never see an iota of difference in the foreign policies of centrists like the Democrats and the most hawkish of Republicans, not with Starmer and Macron, with Le Pen or Farage, not with Maher and Shapiro. I think it's only fair to conclude, like Nader El-Hafnawi does, that centrism is an inherently conservative philosophy. In practice, centrism aligns with and reinforces existing power structures and reactionary policies. By opposing significant progressive changes and advocating for incremental adjustments within the status quo, centrism maintains and legitimizes right-wing dominance in Western politics. What do we do with this information? Concede nothing to centrists. What's that phrase about the definition of insanity? Concessions and compromises have led us to this point in history right now, and what have we got to show for it? Try it. Write a list of things that the left have accomplished by backing centrists. Libs ain't your comrades. It always brings me back to what Malcolm X used to say about the deceitfulness and dangers of the liberal politician. The liberal is more deceitful than the conservative. The liberal is more hypocritical than the conservative. And I think that comparison of Maher and Shapiro exemplifies this dynamic perfectly. What to take from this? They're both on a spectrum of atrociousness, and I struggle to place Maher as a lesser evil, and so should you. If I had to leave a parting note on this discussion, I guess it would be to stay on guard against the Bill Mahers of the world and stop compromising with them. Why not compromise, engage and form bridges with fellow socialists, fellow anti-imperialists? It doesn't need to be perfect, you don't need to agree on every single thing. Just stop funneling support into the centre and therefore the right.